Winged Nation presents, presented by Drydene DRF Racing Oils.
Sprint car racing is known for some great characters, and one of the best ambassadors our sport has is Shane Carson. He's a 2007 inductee into the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and for Shane, it's been a lifelong passion. He was a little kid. His father was a promoter. He was selling programs in the stands, and he's done everything. He's promoted races. He's driven race cars. He's owned teams. He has done it all, and Shane Carson continues to this day to be one of our sport's great ambassadors. At the Knoxville Nationals, had a chance to catch up and sit down with the Hall of Famer. With thousands of laps logged, Drydene's DRF racing oils were built and proven on the track, and now they're ready for your race engine. DRF is engineered exclusively for high horsepower racing engines that require maximum performance against the toughest competition. And DRF racing and break-in oils are built with competition-grade ZDDP to protect critical engine components while boasting improved torque and horsepower and superior temperature reduction. To get DRF in your engine, go to drfracing.com or call 1-877-DRYDENE. We are here at Knoxville Raceway. It's Wing Nation Presents, and we're talking to a Hall of Famer. 2007 inductee into the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum. Shane Carson is here. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's all busy downstairs and here, so it's all good.
Yeah, it is race week here in Knoxville, so we're busy, and we want to talk about all that's going on here because Shane is maybe the busiest man here during race week. But I want to go back to your racing and your early days. Your dad was involved, so it's a family business, if you will. What are your earliest memories? What bug bit you to get you involved in it?
All my heroes were racers that ran locally right there at Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
You know, we thought those guys were the best. They could go to any series and run with the Indy 500 guys and win. We, you know, as far as I was concerned, they were the best we could see. You know, we had other events come in Oklahoma City, IMCA, USAC, but they normally ran them in the afternoon during the fair, and they weren't any good. I'm thinking, man, our guys are so much better than these guys. Yeah. But now I learned more about that later.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, I started when I was 8. I finally got to go to sell programs at the track because I had that was a rule. You couldn't go till you were 8. And then as soon as I was 8, I could sell programs. So that's what I started doing it.
So your family is running the business. You're selling programs. But in 1973, you decided that you want to get to the other side of the fence behind the wheel of a race car.
Much.
Talk about getting to that point and what your passion was for driving.
Well, my passion was to be like those guys I watched all my life. But prior to that, for a couple of years before that, I got into motorcycle racing. And I was racing motocross stuff. And my mom and dad didn't know about it. I had a panel truck, and I kept my bike in the panel truck. And somebody ratted on me and told my dad that I was racing, and I won. And that was a bad thing, because he said, if you're going to race, you're going to race cars. So that was 73.
Well, that kind of worked out all right.
I still kept the bike.
Yeah, you still kept the bike, though, yeah.
Because, you know, motocross is a great tool for learning how to ride, actually how to race without wrecking and getting hurt.
Yeah.
Because you can fall off a bike and get hurt. You spin out in the car, you just straighten out and go.
Yeah.
So, you know, you learned a lot about finishing the race and passing bikes and moving through the field without crashing. So
yeah.
What do you remember? Good thing.
Yeah, 1973 you start racing. It wasn't long, you were actually winning races. What do you remember, you know, the climbing in behind the wheel of the race car, getting out there on the racetrack? What are some of your early memories of just the thrill of being a race car driver?
Well, luckily I was a beneficiary of my brother's race car, so it was always set up well, and it was it was a successful car when I got a hold of it, because he went into the next division up, so I got his car, you know, at that level, and it was pretty competitive, and it was a 6-cylinder inline Chevy.
Yeah, okay.
And you know, no power steering, none of that stuff. You don't need all that. The brakes probably didn't work all that well, but we didn't care. And you know, and I just got to where I could drive it, and I was able to be competitive right away. And of course, you know, all the old timers that were racing at that time, they'd been racing for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They didn't really like it. You know, I was 18, whatever. I think you had to be 18 to race, So I was 18, and this kid, plus he's a promoter's kid, come in, and you know, they're thinking he's probably out here every day hot lapping, practicing. You know, that's an unfair advantage, but I never did, because my dad he made an example out of me every time. If it was a photo finish, I lost. I don't care if I was ahead.
He was
that guy.
He was the one you're going to get your butt whooped in school, and then you're going to get butt whooped at home.
Yeah.
He was the same way with you, although they thought it was the opposite, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they thought it was a big advantage, and I thought it was a big disadvantage.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Oh, yeah.
You quickly made the jump into open wheel cars. Mm-hmm. How did that work?
Well, mine was open wheel.
Was open wheel, okay.
It's kind of a modified looking body, but they're open wheel.
Right, open wheel. But
straight axle rear, open tube rears, and that sort of thing.
But then into the sprint cars.
And then I was running that 6-cylinder Chevy in Tulsa. I ended up putting a Ford in it and going to Tulsa. And Laverne Nance was going to Tulsa because he was selling parts. So he was watching these kids in that lower division. And he told somebody, he said, man, I think that Shane kid could probably drive a sprint car. And so he told me about it. And I hadn't even seen a sprint car hardly. And he talked me into hot lapping it one night. So I go from my 6-cylinder Chevy, probably 250 horse, up to his 550 horse sprint car. And we hot lapped it at Dewey, Oklahoma. And then he said, why don't you hot lap it the next night at Tulsa? And that was like Bridgeport. 5/8 flat, high speed.
Yeah.
So I go and do that too. And after that was over, I come in, he said, well, he goes, I think we should go racing. I'm thinking, I probably figured he'd probably say, we'll go to Dallas or we'll go somewhere. He goes, we're going to go to Denver. And I'm thinking, Denver? Where's Denver?
He
said, Denver, Colorado. So we went to Denver, Colorado. A 2-day show. Wolfgang won the first one, and Eddie Levitt won the second, and I ran 4th or 5th in both of them. So that's how I got started.
Wow.
That was 1976.
1976. Yep. Okay. I read, it was one sentence in something I read. 1977, Laverne Nance. An all aluminum sprint car? What was
right
that?
Here.
Really?
Here.
What was?
Well, the car was built by George Gillespie and Fred Linder. They designed it, and Nance built it. It was an aluminum chassis car. I still have it. It's at my house.
Okay.
But anyway, they built the car, and that was the first of the new design, not a bolt-on roll cage. It was a new design Nance. And Fred and George talked him into building it. And Lance said, well, Nance had all these hookups around Wichita that built aircraft that were aluminum, and so he had all that.
Okay.
So he just, behind the scenes, he built this aluminum car, and when Fred and George came to pick up their car, it was aluminum. And they said, oh, I'm not sure about that, but he talked them into taking it, and they went and raced it. And I mean, the first few races, they went in like the wing flew off, broke the studs off. That didn't work. So then the shock towers, they're welded on and had the bolts for the shocks, and it broke them off.
Yeah.
So they had to build some with sliders on them so it would hold the shocks.
Found all the weak spots, didn't you? Yeah.
So anyway, they raced that thing, and the rear torsion tubes twisted out of the rear because they were not secured enough. So when you was racing it, I remember watching it at Manzanita or somewhere, and Fred was driving it, and I was just watching from the infield, and that car was getting lower every lap. Well, the tubes were twisting out of the rear.
Oh, yeah.
So when it came across at the end, it was like dragging the ground. So they went and fixed the rear tubes by putting steel tubes on it. And then they ran a race somewhere out west, maybe Ascot, and they brought it back to Nance's shop and said, we're done with this car.
Yeah.
We want to steal one. So Laverne, he was really an innovator.
Right, yeah.
A really smart guy, self-taught. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, so he gives him a steel frame, but he never forgot about that aluminum car.
Yeah.
He always thought, one day. And I'd been driving that spring front with the bolt-on cage, the Nance car.
Right.
And he said, well, Shane will drive it. He don't care. So, so he put it back together, and we bring it to Knoxville. Yes. This is No Wing, Knoxville, Iowa, Saturday night show, and we're really fast. I think we were fast, either fast time or second, on a weekly show. And Earl Wagner, who was he was the competition director. So Earl comes over. He's got a wrench in his pocket. He pulls the wrench out. And he's dinging on the cage, donk, 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 doesn't sound like steel.
No.
And we didn't paint it, it was aluminum. He's like, bonk, bonk. He goes, has a cigarette, and he goes, boys, you need to take this car home. It's illegal. And Laverne's sitting right there. And he's looking at me, he goes, what'd he say? I said, he said it was illegal, we got to take it home. He goes, well, we're not done racing. He said, well, you just changed the rule, and we had to take it home. So we didn't run it.
That's it, yeah.
That night. We'd already run it a time or two, but
right.
Anyway, we take it back to Wichita, put a steel frame together, come back for the Nationals that year in '77, and ran. And I was actually leading the feature on Friday night, and blew the motor. so I roll into the pits, and there's a bunch of guys standing around it from Washington State that I knew who they were, and Laverne said, "Well, we just sold that car." So he sold the car out from under me.
Right out from under you.
So I was done again, back to my 6-cylinder. Yeah, I was back at Tulsa.
That's 77.
True
Okay.
story, yeah.
So 77, but you're back. Mm-hmm. But in 78, you started what would be not only an owner-driver relationship, but a lifelong friendship with Bob Trossel.
Yeah.
Well,
when he called me, he goes, Wolfie quit. Wolfie went to Speedway Motors. He was going to drive for Speedy Bill. And I was just learning who the players were.
Right.
I didn't really know. I knew Nance. And we actually, when I was with Nance in the spring of '77, we won a race, and my very first feature win ever was in a sprint car at Phoenix City, Alabama. It was a double feature night. I won one, Wolfie won the other. Well, when I beat Wolfie that night, or that day, apparently Bob Trossel never forgot that. So when Wolfie quit, he called me.
Oh, wow.
In the winter of '77, and he goes, I'd like for you to drive my car. We're going to go to Florida, and we're going to run this whole series. And if if you pass the test, you'll be the driver for the year.
Yeah.
So, I go down there with, it was like a apprenticeship or something.
Right, yeah.
So I go down there and we run all those races. I didn't, with Bob Trossel in the 20 car, the one that's downstairs.
Yeah, in the museum, yeah.
So I run all those races. I didn't win any, but I didn't crash, and I looked fast enough he told me to move up there.
Nice.
So that's how it happened. I moved out to Des Moines and started racing with Bob. I won my first feature at Lakeside in April that year, and then we won 25 features throughout the year and won the title here.
Yes, exactly.
So that was big for me.
The era and reading like Wolfgang's book and everything, those relationships, while the friendships go on and ever, sometimes the business. So you did bounce around a little bit. You seem to come back to Trossel a couple times also.
In '79, at the end of '78, when I won all those races and I won a couple of titles, and Bob said, he called me and said, well, we're not going to go to Eldora. I've been waiting to go to Eldora all year, and there was a 10,000 to win race at Eldora.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow, can they really pay that? But we did it. We went up where we were going. Yeah. We get back from Chula Vista, California, in probably early October, and I'm at my house in Oklahoma City getting all my stuff ready, checking out my tear-offs, making sure I got gloves, and I'm all good to go. I'm headed to Ohio, and Bob calls me and he said, well, he goes, we're not going to Eldora. He goes, I don't think you can do any good there anyway. I'm still trying to process that.
Yeah.
And then he follows that up with, and by the way, Wolfie's in, you're out. That was at the end of '78. So that's how it first started.
Right.
So then I'm sitting there kind of numb with wondering what's going on, and I get a call from the Nichols brothers out of Ohio.
Right.
And I knew who they were, but I'd never been around them. And they called and they said, hey, we heard you're looking for a ride. And I'm thinking, I just got off the phone with Bob Trossel. How do you hear that?
Yeah.
Because that's not like the day of internet.
Yeah, it's not
and our phones.
Yeah.
We can do that today.
Yeah.
But back then, it usually took Speed Sport coming out like in a month or a week.
To find out the news,
yeah. Anyway, he says, I just talked to Bob, and he said you're out, and I should get you to come and race. So I called Danny Smith and a couple of guys and asked them about the car, and they weren't painting a very pretty picture.
Okay, yeah.
But I thought, I've been planning on this all year, so I'm going to go ahead and go.
Go to Eldora.
So I flew I think I flew to Toledo. They picked me up. We come down to the shop in Lima, and it's like midnight or something. And the race is the next day. You had to be in the pits at 9 o'clock in the morning. So we pull in there so I can fit the car at midnight. And I walk in the shop, and you couldn't even see in there, and the motor was laying on the ground.
Oh my God!
And the car was all taken apart. And I said, well, "Was that the car?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Where's the motor?" "Oh, we're just checking the bearings." I got the tan off. It's got floor dry swept up around it. I'm thinking, "Oh no,
this is not
good." So we go to their house, and when I got up the next morning, that thing was all together, and they hauled me down there, and I won that race.
Yeah.
At Eldora, yes.
Oh my
and that was a big story.
Yeah, I guess
that was a big story.
I guess so.
It was one that nobody believed, including me.
Yeah.
And we called Bob Trossel on the way home.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. We go, let's go to the payphone. So we find a payphone on the highway somewhere, and we all pile in this payphone. There's like 5 of us. The Nichols brothers are in there with me. They're like, and I'm saying, well, Bob, this Shane, we're just headed from Eldora, and we want to let you know how it went. He goes, well, who won? I said, well, who do you think won? He goes, well, Wolfie? I said, no, it wasn't Wolfie. I said, had to have been Steve. No, it wasn't Steve either. He goes, well, who won? I said, we did. And I'm like, hello?
Yeah.
he wasn't saying a word.
Really?
Yeah. But he finally come around and he said, well, congratulations. Charlie Schwartz ran second.
Yeah.
In the other Trossel car.
Okay, yeah.
So he had 2 Trossel cars up front. So,
yeah.
So he kind of put it aside for a minute and promoted the fact that his cars ran 1-2.
Well, there we go.
That's what happened. So
that's
anyway.
my story. I'm sticking with it, right?
Much,
You know, Oklahoma City's been your home base. 82 and 83, you did run the full World of Outlaw tour, 3rd in points, 5th in points. What the grind, the gruel of it? We hear drivers talk about it today. How difficult was it? How challenging was that at that point?
Because I was kind of the crew chief and the driver. I wasn't the owner because the owner was Tom Garrett Farms.
Right.
And that was our financer, and he didn't go. He just kind of let me take off with the stuff, and you know, we went out on the road. We learned those relationships, how important they were.
Yeah.
I stayed at Bobby Allen's, or I stayed at Leland's, or I stayed at Oski's, or wherever, and I was all over the country. But it worked, and I run good enough to run 2nd or 3rd in the points in 1982. But the crew thing was the issue. I had like 5 or 6 guys that I kind of rotate out.
Yeah.
Every time I come home, I was tired of them, and I'd leave them home and get a couple more. So I'd trade in my crew guys and take off the other direction.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest challenge.
Probably. Well, it had to be though, because you roomed together, you lived together, you did everything.
We pretty much did. We even slept in the truck a lot. You know, we had
I'm sure.
We had Camper Shell, which was really state of the art. Camper Shell.
Absolutely.
And it was like kind of like a Newell or a Prevost, but it's not quite. But it was just a Camper Shell. And we were living in that truck.
Oh God!
And we went everywhere. Yeah,
I'd get sick of people that I love in a situation like that. Let alone people that you
I think that happened a lot. Yeah.
You go a couple years. You run the World of Outlaw tour, and then you end up running. You kind of move into champ karts. What happened? What happened from the World of Outlaw to the champ karts there? Champ cars? How did that go?
When '83, when the season was over, my owner Tom Garrett, he was done. He was done with the racing. We kind of liquidated the team, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And about that time, C.K. Spurlock called me from Gambler.
Okay.
He said, we want to build some 100-inch cars like you guys run there. And what they look like a Champ dirt car, like a USAC car.
Yeah.
And he said, we can run with those guys if you take this car and go run with them. So he supplied the rolling car and all the stuff I needed. We come up with the tires and wheels and a motor, and we went racing. And that was towards the end of '84, and then all of '85, '86, '87.
Yeah.
We won a lot of races. We won the USAC competition. They had a big USAC challenge with NCRA at Oklahoma City. That was a good one.
That race was a good one because you became really popular. What transpired in that race that made you really popular at the end of that one? Yeah.
Well, we were good anyway. But,
yes, no doubt.
But we were running with a couple of guys that were pretty tough to race with, and that's Rich Vogler and a lot of the USAC guys. You know, those guys were good, but they were also pretty rough on people.
Were they? Okay,
yes. And we were starting the race, and we're coming down the back straightaway, and Vogler and a guy named John Johnson he's out of Kansas, got together. Johnson end over ends down the back straightaway, and we were all trying to miss him. But it was caused by those guys getting together on the very first lap. It's a 50-lap race.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's wrong with those guys? And I could see it that it was, in my opinion, from where I was, I thought it was Vogler run into him crashing.
Yeah.
And that's still probably the thought most people have.
Sounds like the fans believe that as well. Yeah.
Except Vogler.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway.
Yeah.
And he was driving for Bike and Fortune.
Okay.
With the Coors Light car. So anyway, they get together, big crash, and we come around. There's a red flag, and he stops, and I run into him, right on the front straight. Man, you could have heard. The people went nuts. They thought I was going to get out and hit him. This is great.
Yeah.
They thought we were going to have a race and a fight. So I get out of the car and I go up to the car and I'm looking in there, and he's just sitting there like this. He wasn't even looking at me. I said, "Hey," I said, "I'm going to be behind you now, and I'm going to be passing you. Don't be wrecking me." And he says he ran over me. I said, "Oh, that's not the way I saw it." And I could hear the people getting really loud. And I look over this way, and the whole crowd from the back straightaway is headed to his car. That's John Johnson.
John's team, and
all them guys were coming. And I looked at him, I said, "Good luck." And I tell you, Vogler was so brave. That guy, it was evident that he was brave.
Yeah, he's amazing talent.
And he was. And he just sat there like this. And he finally got out of the car, and all the police were there, and the fans were roaring. John Johnson was right there on him. Nobody hit anybody.
Yeah, just good conversation.
And they restarted the race, and Vogler was leading it. When I caught him, and I passed him and won.
And the crowd went wild.
Yes, and I passed him on mid-race, and I'm coming down the front chute, and we got open headers, 2 cars right together, and I could hear that crowd.
Really?
Yes, over the motors. And it was wide open down the straightaway, and I could hear them.
We,
wow, this is big.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think. What is that like? What is that like? I mean, I know you want to go fast, you want to win.
Yeah.
But when you have a moment like that, what is that like to be able to hear the crowd and you know what's going on?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a very satisfying feeling.
I bet.
Because I was passing this guy, and I know they were behind me too.
Yeah.
You know, they were all into it, and it was so good. I probably should have ran for public office or something. Because I could have been the mayor. That's what everybody told me. You could be the mayor. I said, well, I don't want to be the mayor.
Yeah.
I just want to race.
That is cool. That is.
But that's
so
kind
neat.
of the story. That's what happened.
I love that story. It just shows all the personalities and the passion of the sport is what it shows.
You know, Vogler and Blackie split. They didn't run anymore after that night.
Right. Okay.
You know, and so I heard, you know, Rich got out of the car in the pits and exited through the fence, and he left.
Yep.
Because they were looking for him.
They were looking for him.
They were looking for him. So, you know, and me and Rich talked more after that.
Yeah, sure.
And we raced together some, and it never came up. As a matter of fact, the first Chili Bowl was right after that, 87.
Yeah.
And Vogler wins the race, and I'm about third maybe or so. And he's getting interviewed after the race, and he says, these Oklahoma people are so passionate, because they were all booing him, you know, after he won the first Chili Bowl. Yeah, of course, you know.
It's amazing. Absolutely. You go through this champ car phase, and then early 90s, 1990, back to sprint cars. I believe it was NCRA.
Well, I was still in sprint cars all the time.
You're still doing that all the time, too, ran both.
Yeah.
But you really focused in on it, and you had a run with the NCRA where you had like 8 or 9 years, top 5 in points.
Right.
We
didn't win the championship with them, but I was very close a couple of times, and we did win a lot of races with a couple of different owners, and it was a great time for me. I mean, I had a great time with it, but I was also promoting races through the whole time in 1980 on.
Yeah. Let's go there, because that's in my notes.
Yeah.
The decision, we talk about this. This is 1980 when you and Wolfgang are swapping out Trossel's car and everything. The decision to promote racing. Of course, your father did that, but what was it? Was it the money, obviously, the security? What was it that made you start promoting races?
You know, I was up here running for Bob in 1980 in the spring. Actually went to Florida and ran all the races in Florida. Come back here, and the season started, and we're starting to run the Knoxville season and all the races around here. And, you know, me and Bob, we built a brand new car. It's actually in the museum. It's a vice grip car downstairs.
Okay, yep.
The yellow one.
Yellow, yeah.
We built this brand new car. I didn't really like it. You know, Bob was like, you know, it was my fault it wasn't winning. I didn't like the car. I thought it was his fault for building something weird.
Yeah.
So we weren't getting along that great. So about, I don't know, it was probably April or May. I said, you know, this ain't working. I'm going home. So I went to Oklahoma. I had a World Outlaw show coming up in June.
Yeah.
I really kind of thought I was just going to promote from then on.
Right.
I was going to be okay with putting on the outlaw shows because, I mean, I'd been around the outlaw shows, and I knew the potential.
Yeah, yeah.
And Oklahoma City was one of those tracks that was like, I mean, it was like this.
Top tier, yeah.
Big grandstand. You know, we seated 9,600 people. You know, we had a half mile. We had a quarter mile on the inside. We had pits for 200 semis on concrete.
Yeah.
So it had all the right stuff, and I really was wanting it to go good, and it did. But that first one, my dad said, "Don't do it. It'll never work here."
Really?
Because he'd been running weekly shows, and you know they had $5 ticket or something, and we had this outlaw show coming, and we were going to charge like $12. He said, "Oh, that'll never work here." He said, "I recommended you don't do it." Well, I did it anyway. Huge crowd.
Yeah.
Doug Wolfgang wins.
Yeah.
You know, it was 100 degrees at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my God.
During the feature, yes. And it was packed with people, and they loved it. And I kept doing it. I did them from 80 until 2002.
Yeah.
Those outlaw shows.
Did the outlaw shows.
2 a year normally, spring and
Right,
summer.
right. Racing along the way, as we've described, all of that in there. We talked about the NCRA success. How did you go then? Okay, this is one of those left turns for the ages. Okay, in the 90s, you're a sprint car racer in Oklahoma, and in 2000, you're driving for the Richard Petty driving experience. How did that turn happen?
Well, that happened because my owner, I was with the same owner for 10 years, James Helms.
Yep, James
He was
Helms.
out of Dallas, great guy. He let me run the team out of Oklahoma, but he lived in Texas.
Right.
And I took that team and went everywhere we wanted to race, including all the NCRAs and up here a lot. And he just let me do it. And I was with him for 10 years. And in 2000, actually, in the end of 99, after the season was over, he developed cancer. So he was fighting it, but April 1st of 2000, he passed away.
Okay.
So me and the widow talked about all her stuff we had. She said, well, I don't need it. I don't want to keep it, obviously. And she goes, we can't race. because he was the money.
Yeah, right.
And I said, well, let me help you liquidate, which I did. And it took me probably 6 months to liquidate the team. Trucks, trailers, motors, all the stuff we had. And right after that, it was early April of 2000, Brad Knopfsinger calls me. Now, Brad Knopfsinger, sprint car buddy from California.
Okay, I see the connection
Me and Brad have been buddies since the 80s, early 80s. So he calls me, he said, you know, he goes, I got a deal for you. I know your owner passed away. He said, I want you to try this. And I said, what is it? He said, well, it's the stock car driving school called Richard Petty Driving Experience. I'm thinking, you mean like stock cars? He goes, yeah. NASCAR cars? He goes, yeah. And I said, oh, those wouldn't be any fun. But he talked me into it. He said, I want you to go to Milwaukee, and I want you to give it a shot, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So he puts it together. They fly me to Milwaukee, and we got a 3 or 4 day run in Milwaukee. Yeah. 1 mile flat track.
Right.
And we're running these ride-along cars, which is what I was driving. 2-seater NASCAR. You put a guy in there, and we go. 3 laps, bring him in, get another one. So we just that's what we did. And Milwaukee at that time was really, really hot.
Yeah.
And there was tons of people in line. And we ran through that whole deal that whole weekend. And I got back to Oklahoma, and he calls me. He said, well, what do you think? I said, you know what? I could probably do that, because, you know, you have no, financial,
there you go. Yeah.
Exposure. You don't have anything like that. You just go, they fly you there, you do the deal, you fly back home, you do regular stuff for 3 or 4 days, and you go again.
Yeah, you get your check. And
that's what happened. And he said, well, what do you think if I just send you a schedule, and you can pick the days you want? I'm saying, okay. So he sends me a schedule, and there's 200 days a year on track.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then plus travel.
Yeah.
At 20 tracks. So there I went from full-time sprint car guy to a full-time stock car guy.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and I did it for 5 years.
Yeah, and I think that and I think that leads to, and you say you did it for 5 years, because at that point then the World of Outlaws had reached out to you, and you did some race directing. But I think the role that you've assumed, and you continue to this day, and I was the goodwill ambassador, the #1 fan of the sport. You did get back into sprint car racing, and you did a little stint with the World of Outlaws, right?
Right. Yeah. 2005 to 10. The Outlaws were just getting.
Yeah.
They'd changed hands.
Okay, so, that's right.
They sold out to a guy in Oklahoma named Paul Kruger. Paul didn't have a lot of experience in the business or in racing at all, so they hired me, and it was in Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I lived right there. I thought, well, this will work. I can do this, and I'll be closer to home, and it wasn't hard at all. And so I started doing that, and immediately I started going to the different events and working on the problems with the series. And the first one they had was scheduling, because they were getting ready to go up against the NSL,
right?
A whole other group that was wanting to have all the races, and basically the Outlaws be gone.
Yeah.
So I was trying to keep that from happening by securing the tracks that we needed for a good schedule. That was Knoxville, that was Eldora.
Keep those big ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we did that. That was the Gold Cup. And those big events, we went and we secured those before they did. And then they went after the schedule, and they already had these other races booked. So I think really what happened was Richard Petty and the people that were trying to back that deal.
National Sprint League, yep.
Barry Graham.
Right, I remember that.
And what was funny about that was Barry Graham was the owner of the Richard Petty Driving Experience.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I'm on the other side.
Oh, that's right.
And he's saying, well, how come you're not working for us? I said, well, because I'm working for them. He said, well, I don't get it. So anyway.
You were working for us.
That's what happened. So we put a schedule together. The Outlaws, obviously, in looking back and looking at what's going on today, they're pretty good. They're pretty solid.
Yeah, you got a big part.
The crowds are huge. The racing's good. I feel good about that, because I think I might have made a difference along the way.
You should. Yeah, you should. That is really, really neat.
Yeah.
You have evolved after that more formal operational stint with the World of Outlaws, with the Sprint Car Hall of Fame. You have become like the goodwill ambassador. You're a people person. I know that doesn't hurt. Yeah. You love conversation. Just what does it mean to you to still have a vibrant, key, big role in this sport that you've loved your whole life?
Well, it seems pretty hard to believe, actually.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, and a lot of our friends that I saw race and I got to race with, they're not around anymore. They quit coming.
They quit coming. Yeah, that's the big thing. A lot of them quit stopping.
They're done with it, and I don't want to be that. I feel like that. That all my upbringing was kind of centered around racing, even locally. Just local stuff. But I wanted to be involved in it still, and I want to be able to make a difference. I see all these kids that if they just had a little confidence, a little push, who knows what could happen with them. And I see that all the time. I mean, and you know who some of them are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now they're here.
They're here. Yeah, they're signing on. Yeah,
You know, and yeah, I mean, I just wanted to be able to make a difference there too. So I feel like I'm doing that.
We're filming this during Knoxville Nationals week. Okay, one of the projects is you keep that Hall of Fame. The Trossel's Garage is of course obviously a tribute to Bob, and your car's down there. But you bring in young drivers, Hall of Fame drivers. You keep that thing rolling. That has to be neat though, because you get a little FaceTime with each of these guys too, and you're able to do that encouraging of these kids.
I love that. You know, and when me and Bob talked, the way it started, Bob and I were talking one day, and he had the garage already down there. He goes, you know, why don't you come down and we'll just do an autograph session. And he goes, see if you can round up a couple of guys and bring them with you. Well, about that time, Kyle Larson and Rico were around. They were kids.
Yeah.
I talked them into coming, and they went with me. And there were 4 of us. We were signing there first time. And then all of a sudden Bob says, well, man, this is pretty cool. He goes, we ought to do this all the time. So we did. And we stepped it up. And every year it got a little bigger. Well, Bob passed away.
Right.
And the decision was, are we going to try to keep it going, or are we just going to not do it because Bob's not here?
Right.
And Tom Schmay was the director of the Hall of Fame at that time.
Yep.
And Tom said, you know what, we'd really like to keep this going if you would be interested in doing it.
Yeah.
So every year I kind of say, man, this is a tough gig, and because you schedule it, some things happen, and all of a sudden the guy can't come, and I feel bad about it, but anyway, we did it. You know, we did it, and we've done it, and I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is great.
That's what it feels
like. But it passes along that generational thing, not only with the drivers, but you get kids walking through line and getting that, and who knows, that kid might be that Shane Carson in in the '60s, that fan of that race car driver. We don't know who that kid might be.
I've seen some of those kids come through there, and now I see them on track. They're racing.
Really?
Yes, because I've been doing it long enough.
Yes,
now.
sure,
They've worked their way up, and there's one down there right now, Gio Selzy. I mean, he's not very old.
No.
You know, and I remember him when he was a little bitty kid too, and now he's like a threat to win any race he goes to.
Yes.
And that's happening, you know, and I like that. Not that I had anything to do with it,
but you're a cog in the wheel. There's a lot that happens, but it's a step there. I mean, and gosh, that is really, really neat. Yeah. So, and then as we look at the Hall of Fame, the growth of the Hall of Fame, the suites here, we're in the.
I know. That's what
I mean, we're in Richard Marshall's suite. He allows us to come in and do this, and this place is. But really, the Brian Clausen Tower, it's got to be very rewarding for you to see the Sprint Car Hall of Fame. You're a member, 2007 inductee, but this place flourishing and vibrant. Hall of Fames are going out of business every time you turn around from not just sports.
And big tracks are.
Yeah, and big tracks are. Yeah. It's got to be rewarding for you to see this place just continue to flourish.
It is that, and I feel like that if you can, you know, I steal this term, promote the future by preserving the past, which is what I do all the time.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes nobody's ever going to know about that, and they're wondering, well, how did it ever get like this? So I'm trying to tell them, and maybe that makes a difference. You know, the first time I was here, it seated about 4,000 people. And there, you could not see from one side of the track to the other. It was so dark.
Yeah.
And now look at it. I mean, that's what this place has turned into. I attribute that to Ralph Capitani.
Yeah, good leadership vision. Yeah.
So he did it, and I'm really glad that I was able to be around and follow him along that way. Because that first year or two I was running there, I'm thinking, man, in black dirt, you know, our track lights were way better than this one.
Yeah, this place, black dirt and no lights.
I'm thinking, first time I went out, I flipped the shield up, I'm looking around, is this lights even on here? You know, and they dropped the green, you know. So you know, I got used to it, but you know, I see how much it's came, how far it's came.
How do you?
And it's cool. That really is part of why I'd come and do it.
We watch the Sprint Car World. Final thoughts. Where do you see this thing? Because I don't. We had a great conversation during the season with Terry McCarl, and I said, "Do you remember 10 years ago when the discussion was, will the sport survive, or how will this, not will it, but how will the sport survive without Steve and Sammy?" Okay, Steve is retired, Sammy's still around, still going and everything. But what do you see? Where do you see this thing going?
I think it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to get better. The big shows are going to get bigger.
Yep.
You know, I really feel that way. I think the talent level is as good as it's ever been. I think it's deeper than it's probably ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the lineup tonight, or you look after this is over tonight, you look at the points for the. I guarantee you go down to about 50 or 60, and you're going to say, "Wow, I can't believe that guy's 60th."
Yeah.
You know, he's the guy that wins everywhere. That can happen.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that we're in a great it's a great time to be a race fan, I
yes,
think.
I think so too.
You know, and I would love to still be racing, but I'm having a pretty good time doing what I'm doing.
Not a bad seat, right?
So I'm doing it.
Shane, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. Always great getting to chat with you, and I'm glad we had a camera present this time.
Me too.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you at the
we're down. We're signing. We got our autograph table session coming up as well. So Shane Carson, 2007 inductee into the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, joining us here from Knoxville on Wing Nation Presents. No matter where I go in the sprint car world or the racing world, one of my favorite people to run into is Shane Carson. Always a great story, always a big smile, just one of the sport's great ambassadors. With thousands of laps logged, Drydene's DRF racing oils were built and proven on the track. And now they're ready for your race engine. DRF is engineered exclusively for high horsepower racing engines that require maximum performance against the toughest competition. And DRF racing and break-in oils are built with competition-grade ZDDP to protect critical engine components while boasting improved torque and horsepower and superior temperature reduction. To get DRF in your engine, go to drfracing.com or call 1-877-DRYDENE.
Winged Nation Presents, presented by Drydene DRF Racing Oils.